Hi everyone, I'm going to a potluck Christmas party tomorrow. I've decided that what I'm going to take is a cheesecake, a Montreal cheesecake, Gâteau au fromage de Montréal. I have made a number of these over the years, but it's been a few years since I made the last one. It's sitting here in front of me, and I'll give you a look at it in just a second. If you're interested in seeing how it's done, you can carry on and watch the rest of what is another one of my rather lengthy videos, I'm afraid. But to take you step by step through the process, it took close to, well, 20-some minutes, I think, to finish the thing. Anyway, I'll give you a look at the finished product here. There's the beast in all of its glory. I weighed it just before I put it on the serving tray, and it weighed 2.3 kilograms. I think that's 5 pounds, 2 ounces, something like that. Anyway, it's a lot of cheese and cream and eggs and all that good stuff. Carry on watching and I'll show you how I did it. Well, to start with, we're going to make the crust, and in the food processor I've put a half cup of sugar, a cup of all-purpose flour, a half cup of butter, and I use regular dairy butter with salt in because there's no salt in the crust recipe, and the rind or peel of a lemon. And I use one of these kitchen rasp things to put the peel in. Works very well. I've already grated most of it in there, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Very fine, almost like hair, but it blends very well. This can also be done using 2 knives and a bowl. Pastry blender. Once it's blended, it's got the fat evenly distributed there. It makes a nice fine base. You add 1 egg yolk. Of course, my egg yolk is fresh from the hens this morning. You bring this together into a ball, which I will do by hand, show you what it looks like, and then you refrigerate it for an hour. When I finish cooking, there's never a clean dish in the house. I've transferred the dough mixture to a large mixing bowl here to make it into a ball, which it does quite easily. Begin to see why I think of this as a heart-stopping cheesecake. I never make it for myself because I would sit down and eat it until it was gone. And it certainly is not low in cholesterol. Take it to a Christmas party, 25 or 30 people, they each get a little piece of it. I guess it won't be that lethal. There's the pastry, and what you do now is you refrigerate it for an hour to firm it up so that you can work it into your cheesecake mold. Well, while the pastry is chilling in the refrigerator, you can get a little bit of a head start on the filling. You get out your antique Sunbeam Mixmaster, which probably dates from the early 60s sometime. I think it was the only mixer that my mother ever had. She might have had a little hand mixer at some time as well, but anyway, this thing I'm sure is close to 50 years old, and it is still clunking away, so as long as it clunks away, I'm going to continue to use it. shut this off so I can explain what I'm doing here. This is just the cream cheese. I say just the cream cheese. There's 2.5 pounds of cream cheese. It's a little over a kilogram of cream cheese. And it's supposed to be beaten until fluffy. Well, cold cream cheese, it takes a while, so I won't bore you with all of that. I started off slowly, and then as it becomes more malleable, I speed it up a bit, but I'll bring you back in and show you when it's all finished. Well, that's been about 3 or 4 minutes of slowly beating it and turning up the speed a bit. And that's as fluffy as it gets at this point. You don't have to worry too much about the part that's inside the beaters, because when I add the other more liquidy ingredients, they will come out and blend into the rest of the batter. But at this point I just stop with I just want to get a little head start here. I won't be doing anything more for the cream cheese filling until I have the pastry in the pan and ready to fill it and put it in the oven. The cheesecake is baked in a springform pan, a 9-inch, 23 centimeter springform pan, and you grease it. I use a Pam kitchen spray here. Sides and bottom liberally greased, and then you remove the sides. Because the bottom, you put the pastry on the bottom first, and then that is blind baked. You bake the bottom for a period of time, reattach the sides, and add the side pastry before you put the batter in. After you've removed the sides, you take approximately 1/3 of the pastry dough, which has been chilling, crush it down. The idea is to cover the bottom of the springform pan evenly with the pastry dough. You get your fingers into it eventually here once you've got it down. If the roughly 1/3 wasn't enough, then of course you have to take a little more of your pastry dough to cover the bottom of the pan. I won't force you to watch this entire process. I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like when I've finished covering the bottom, and let you know if I had to get any more of the pastry out of the refrigerator to finish covering it. Well, I didn't have to get any extra pastry out of the refrigerator. You have to work at it a bit to make it cover, but eventually I was able to move it around enough that it covers the bottom of the pan. It gets soft very quickly from the heat of your fingers, so once it starts to get soft enough that you can work, I take the bottom of a kitchen tablespoon and press it around that way. It doesn't tend to melt the butter quite as much. Anyway, this is now blind baked. I put it on a cookie sheet, and it goes in a 400 degree oven for 6 minutes. Well, this is what it looks like after it's been blind baked for 6 minutes at 400 degrees. The little holes and gaps and whatever that were in the pastry have all come together, and it's now one sealed pastry for the bottom of the pan anyway. The next phase is to reattach the rim. And this goes in the refrigerator to chill while you're preparing the ropes of pastry that will be pressed around the sides here. The next phase is to make ropes. It says roughly 1 inch in diameter. I'm not so sure that I ever measure these things, but you'll see what I'm doing once I get underway here. The pastry has really chilled and become quite solid because all that butter has really congealed in the refrigerator. But your hands quickly warm it up.
Usually about 4 of these is enough. Has to be enough because that's all the pastry there is left. But these are going to be put around the bottom of the springform pan and then pressed up the sides a couple of inches and sealed together where they meet. So it'll be ready to receive the cheesecake batter. I think, as I said, it says inch. Well, that's not an inch. It's, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch maybe, but who cares? It'll work. Anyway, I won't bore you with making all 4 of these. I'll bring it back when I'm ready to put them in the pan. I forgot to mention how good this smelled coming out of the oven. Butter and lemon. I think I've always felt that this particular pastry would make an excellent shortbread cookie, but I've never tried it. It's hard to stop eating it when you're working with it, and you're going to run out if you don't be careful. So anyway, what I'm doing now, my 4 ropes are going in place, and then they will be pressed into the bottom and up the sides of the pan. Try to get one here where I can show you what I'm doing. Get my shadow out of the picture here. It's quite thick at that point, but as I keep moving it up the sides, making sure that it's sealed, it will become thinner and thinner. I'll bring you back in a minute or two and show you what the finished product here looks like. Well, that's what the pan looks like encased in the pastry. You don't have to worry about being perfectly even and straight on the top edge. It tends to adjust itself in the oven and comes out, I think, looking quite nice. The thing to be as careful with as possible is to make sure you have it sealed around the bottom. Springform pan is quite tight. It wouldn't leak out into the oven. When I bake it, I do put it back on a cookie sheet because there's so much butter in the pastry that sometimes some clarified butter, liquid butter, will leak out and that can make a smoky mess in your oven. So I always bake it on a cookie sheet. Right now, this goes back into the refrigerator to chill again while you make the batter. We're back with our antique mixer and ready to continue making the batter. You start by adding another teaspoon of grated lemon rind. It looks like a lot more than a teaspoon, but I think if I were to compact that light fluffy stuff down into a spoon, it would be roughly right. It doesn't make any difference to me if there's a little extra there because I really like the flavor of lemon. A half teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I probably go a little strong on that too. And you turn that on and combine those ingredients, and while they are combining, you add honey. 3/4 of a cup of honey in a thin stream as it's mixing the other ingredients in. I'm using a raw wildflower honey, which has got an excellent strong honey flavor, which I like, but it's not a pasteurized honey or anything. It's a raw wild honey, kind of dark. So I will show you that process. scrape down the sides here before I start adding more ingredients, just to make sure that getting all of the cream cheese mixed into the batter. The next addition is a mixture of 1 cup of white sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, I used a sea salt, and 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. You turn the beater on and let it go at a slow speed continually as you add this, a spoonful at a time. Well, something I maybe should have mentioned, it's a neat little trick anyway. The honey pours much easier out of your measuring cup if you spray that also with the cooking spray pan. I do that with honey or with molasses or anything thick like that. Anyway, I will show you a bit of this being added, but I won't show you the whole thing. We'll come back for the next process after that. I think that beat until it's quite smooth. Next you add eggs, 5 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks. I said this is a cholesterol delight. I'll show you some of them being added. You add them one at a time and thoroughly beat afterwards. Well, I have them already broken into a bowl here. So. Well, that's the eggs all mixed in, and as if there wasn't enough fat in this already, the last ingredient in the batter is a 1/4 cup of whipping cream. Scrape down the sides of the bowl and give this one final mix just to make sure everything is incorporated. Well, that's the chilled pastry case back out of the refrigerator. And as I say, I bake it on a cookie sheet. I cover that with foil as well, just in case there is something that leaks and makes it easier to clean. Your batter goes in. And this bakes for 8 minutes in a 400-degree oven, and then you reduce the oven temperature to 200 degrees and continue to bake it for 1.5 hours or more until the cake is set. And you can usually tell that by jiggling it. If it's you don't want it to crack open on the top or anything, but you also don't want it to run when someone cuts into it. So I'll show you the finished product when I'm ready to unmold it a bit later. As soon as I said that you bake it for 200 degrees at 1.5 hours, flash came into my mind that in the past that never did work. That's the first time I've ever baked it in this particular stove. I haven't baked this cheesecake in years, but I noticed a note in the margins of my handwritten recipe book where I had written in 2.5 hours plus in my oven. Well, it's no difference in this newer stove either. It took almost 3 hours to get the consistency that I wanted. I tested it a couple of times with a cake tester. There's still a little bit comes out on it, but as it cools down, it continues to solidify more. Anyway, the next part of the cooking process is to leave it in the oven with the heat turned off and the door ajar. I've got the door wide open. I'm going to put it up so it's just ajar for at least a half hour. Well, after it cooled for 30 minutes in the oven with the door ajar, it was cool enough that you could pick it up and bring it out by hand. Remember me saying that I didn't want a crack in the middle? Well, there's a crack in the middle. I'll show you when I decorate the top how to disguise that so nobody will even know it's there. Anyway, now it has to completely cool before you remove the outside ring, so that's another 2 or 3 hours of sitting on a wire rack. I find it easier to remove the outer ring of the springform pan while the cheesecake is still slightly warm. After it's cooled for about an hour, I guess, half hour out of the oven, half hour in the oven. If you let it completely cool, sometimes the butter or whatever that's around the edge congeals again and you tear some of your pastry off. But anyway, I just removed it. That worked very well. I will let it continue to completely cool here on the rack, and then I'll put it in the refrigerator overnight before I decorate it. It has to be very cold before you can do that. And at that time I'll determine whether or not it's possible to take the bottom of the pan off the bottom of the cheesecake. If it looks like it's going to come off, I remove it. If it looks like it's going to destroy the cheesecake doing it, I leave it there and serve it with the bottom on. That way you don't run the risk of damaging the looks of your cheesecake. Well, the cake has been in the refrigerator chilling for almost 24 hours. I don't know if it shows up on the video or not, but this normally happens. You get some separation between the crust and the filling, the cheesecake, as it cools. And of course you can still see very prominently here the crack that developed in it after it came out of the oven. What I'm going to show you now will cosmetically cover both of those issues. First, I cover the cake with some apricot preserves. I'm putting it through a strainer because the apricot preserves that I have here have got chunks in, and I don't want on top of the cake. So. The preserves are basically just going to act as a glue to hold on what I'm going to use to disguise the problems here. I'll come back in a few minutes and show you what I'm talking about. Well, a few toasted almonds have covered all of the boo-boos, and there it is on the serving tray, ready to go to the Pathfinder Walking Group Christmas party tomorrow afternoon. I wish I could cut you a slice to show you what it looks like, but they probably would look so well if I took it to the party with a slice missing. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Leave comments or questions if you like. Thank you.